Welcome back to Brotherhood and Banter. As promised, today we have a special guest with us, Danielle Fletcher. Welcome to Brotherhood and Banter. Danielle, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. My name is Danielle Fletcher, and I'm part of the Heath Stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I was invited here to kind of talk about my history with the church and how I came to learn about the church and everything. So a little bit about my background. I was born in Bay City, Michigan, but I didn't live there for long. I am an Army brat through and through. I moved everywhere in the world. I lived in Germany 3 separate times. I lived in Kansas and Georgia and Virginia and Pennsylvania, and I ultimately graduated high school in Okinawa, Japan. I ended up going to school at Eastern Michigan University because when you join the military, or when my father joined the military, it was in Michigan. So that was our state of residence, despite the fact that we never lived there for very long. So that was our state of residence. So I went to school there and got in-state tuition. And that's where I actually joined the church when I was in college there. And I worked in an advertising agency until about 2008. And that's when the big recession hit the auto industry, which was my client, my only client on the account that I was on was Chevrolet. And I was laid off with about 200 colleagues and made the decision to move to Texas with my immediate family because that's where they had settled after the military. And there's an old Tejano saying that I may not have been born in Texas, but I got here as fast as I could. And I believe that because I love Texas and I'm not going anywhere. So here I am.
So you mentioned you lived 3 times in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
That interests me because I'm German.
I thought I heard an accent. Yes, wonderful. Yes,
so do
I
you
lived
speak
there.
German?
I know some German. I know enough to get me by. I was 4 years old, or no, 2 years old when I was there the first time. I was 5 years old when I was there the second time. And the third time I was there from 2nd grade through partway through 6th grade.
She froze.
I was always on base. I never attended school off base, but whenever you're in the military, you have to take a class. Whenever you're going to school on a military base, you have to take a class that's called host nation, at least when you're in the younger grades. So whatever nation that you are in, you learn the customs and the language and the culture of that nation to help you learn more about your surroundings. So I was exposed to a lot of German growing up. I took German in high school because I thought that would be easier. And now I like to say I have Swiss cheese German. I understand far more than I can speak because I just don't have enough people to practice with. So, but I have to admit, every time I hear Elder Uchtdorf speak, it just makes my heart happy because it brings me back to thinking of some wonderful times of my life spent in Germany. Beautiful place and one of the places that I really would love to go back to.
Well, you can practice German with me at any time.
Vielen Dank.
Gern geschehen.
Oh, wow. That's cool. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thanks for starting us off. And also just to let you guys know, so we were doing a Temple Recommend interview, and then that's how I got to meet Danielle and heard her story a little bit. And I asked her if she would come on our podcast and share her conversion story. And she said, yes, I'd love to. So thank you for making the time to be with us, Danielle. I appreciate it. As you can see, yeah. So for everyone else, you can see that Jake is not here again. As I think we've said before that Jake was closing down the store LDS Books. So he's just taking some time off right now and just relaxing. So it's just Marc and I again. And I'm Joey. And thank you again, Danielle. So you've shared with us a little bit about yourself. You shared with us where you grew up. So now tell us a little bit. So did you have a religious upbringing?
Yeah, I was raised Catholic. I come from a long background of Irish Catholics. my mother was always the one that took us kids to church with her. My father wasn't really religious when I was growing up. He has since become a little bit more religious since, but he always felt it was important that his children be raised with religion because he believed that it taught them really good morals. So he was never against a church at all. He always encouraged us to go. He always, I should say, enforced that rule of the house that we needed to go to church. So, I was raised Catholic, but I mean, there were always some things that were, I never really considered myself a devout Catholic in the sense of I was a firm believer in everything, but I didn't believe that there was anything that would condemn me to eternity of suffering if I followed the Catholic religion. Otherwise, I don't think that I would have continued to be Catholic for so long. I was comfortable enough to just continue to go through the traditions because that's what I had grown up with. But so that was kind of my upbringing all the way up until I went into college.
Okay.
So how did you get into contact with the church for the first time?
Wow, that's a great question because I feel like the Lord was working on me from a really young age. Whenever I lived in Virginia, I was in 7th grade. Yeah, that was 7th grade. And I had a really good friend, like one of my really close friends within my little circle of like 4 people that I hung with who lived just kind of diagonal from me. And her family was LDS. And I think that's my first memory of being in contact with somebody who was a member of the church. And I remember being over at her house and standing in her room, and she had a poster on the wall, and it was of the 13 Articles of Faith. And I remember reading over them, just kind of glossing over them, and I wasn't paying super close attention, but I was kind of reading over them. I was like, this all makes a lot of sense. So if I believe in all these things, what makes you different than me? And she just kind of looked at me and was like, so that was like encounter number 1 when I was in 7th grade. Then fast forward into my high school years, and I was on a speech and debate team with several people who were members of the church. So I got to be pretty good friends with them. I know anytime you're in some sort of club, you're going to be really tight with a lot of those people, and that's just your people, your group. And I was good friends with a couple, and one of the kids in that circle invited me to prom, and he was a member of the church, and his ward had this amazing tradition where the Sunday after prom, all of the kids that went to prom would get dressed up in their prom garb and come to church. And all of the ward would be outside, like taking paparazzi pictures as the kids walked up with their dates and everything into church.
That is awesome.
Just it was a fun little tradition. He had asked me to come to church with him so that he could have his prom date at the prom sacrament meeting. So that was my first time I had ever been to a sacrament meeting, was in high school. So I went to that, and I got to go to Young Women's at the time because one of the girls who was on my debate team with me was a member of that ward. So I got to go to Young Women's with her. And one of the things that I remember distinctly about that sacrament meeting was watching the young men pass sacrament. And I was asking my date at the time, my friend, I was asking him about that. And I was like, well, that's odd because I was raised Catholic and only the priest does that. And he was like, well, they are priests. And I'm like, what? I didn't get that. So that was just not where I had no idea what he was talking about. So I asked him a little bit more about that, and he explained, about the priesthood. But if I'm being honest, I found it interesting, but I didn't seek any further knowledge about that. So that I just found it interesting and moved on. So then I went to, like I said, fast forward again until I got to college. And that's where things got really interesting because my suite mate was a member of the church. By what I mean by suite mate is we had 2 rooms that were connected by a bathroom in the middle. So we had like a Jack and Jill bathroom in the middle of these 2 rooms. Right. And that composed a suite. So she lived in the opposite room that I did. But the 4 of us we all kind of hung out together. We kept the bathroom doors open. We walked back and forth, but just in each other's rooms and hung out together. So we all consider ourselves all roommates, even though she wasn't in my room.
Yeah.
But she kept inviting me to go to church. But if I'm being honest, I don't know why she kept inviting me, because she didn't like me very much. We laugh about this now, but I don't know what it was about me that she didn't like very much. And I can't tell you now what it was about her that I didn't like very much either. I don't know if we just sensed that we didn't like each other. I don't know what it was, but we were never overtly mean to each other. We weren't best friends, and it was obvious.
You didn't see eye to eye.
No, we really didn't. But the thing is that I went home on Christmas break that year. That was my freshman year. And I went home and I had a sincere talk with the Lord. I did not like the way that I felt when I was around her. And I didn't want to continue living in this situation with somebody that I just did not like being around. So my prayer at that time was that I could see this person the same way that the Lord saw her. Because in my heart of hearts, I knew in my soul that we were all children of God. And I knew that as much as I didn't like her, the Lord loved her. And I didn't like the way that I felt. And I wanted to change that to feel more like he felt toward her.
Wow.
So I went back after break, and I was sitting in technically her room, chatting it up with her roommate. And she walked in, and before I even knew what was coming out of my mouth, I looked up at her and said, "I missed you." I just kind of sat there in my mind going, "Did you just say that?" In my head, I'm going, "You missed her?" And then the most amazing thing happened in the same instant. I had an instant confirmation of, I did miss her. And I was just filled with this love for her. And she looked at me, and it was as if her whole countenance just softened. And she was like, "I missed you too." And we hugged. That would never have happened before we left for break. And then we just went on with our, college life. And she continued to ask me to go to church with her. And
this time there was no more animosity, right?
Right. And up until that point, I had always said no, because to be honest, I wasn't looking for a church. I was comfortable doing what I was doing. I always considered myself spiritual, but not necessarily religious, because there were certain things about every religion that I was finding, and I was like, I don't really believe in those things that they find important. Those things I just couldn't buy into. There were certain things about every religion I was seeing. So I truly believe there was no religion. Yeah.
Quick question. What's the difference between religious and
spiritual?
Spiritual.
Yeah, thank you for stopping me. Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I consider somebody who is religious is following a set of traditions that's followed by many, and with a certain
so a church.
liturgy. Church, yeah, being associated with a specific church. Whereas I think of somebody who is spiritual as somebody that's a little bit more independent in their thinking, and tends to be on their own little island.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Can I say something real quickly? As I listen to you, I see. Here's something that I just learned. Just as I'm listening to you, it's amazing. You were not a member, but yet you had these feelings that we as members have. And this is going to sound crazy, but I realized I knew this, but I realized that other people have these too. These are spiritual experiences. That's why I wanted to ask, right? Because I think, to me, a spiritual person is everyone that has spiritual experiences, whereas a religious person follows, as you said, that set of traditions or beliefs, a church. And so that's why I appreciate that you had those religious, but not religious, spiritual experiences, because that's how I teach my kids. I'm trying to have them have some spiritual experiences because it helps your heart open up more to the promptings of the Spirit. So what caused you to go to church? If you weren't looking, if you guys weren't the best of friends, what made you say yes?
If I'm being honest, at the time, just to make her stop asking,
Just to get her off your back.
I'll be completely honest. That very well could have been it, but I can't, looking back on it and knowing where this road has taken me, it's hard to believe, even from my perspective, that I could have been so flippant about something that had the potential to change my life. I didn't know it at the time, though, to be honest. Yeah, I just didn't. But it very well could have been something as simple as that, just to make her stop asking. Because I really wasn't. I wasn't looking. I wasn't anti anything, church. And in fact, I was perfectly comfortable with lots of people and churches. My big thing was when people got overly zealous about little aspects that they thought were really important to my salvation that I just didn't think were. So that's the part that bothered me about certain religions, or I don't want to say it's the religions. It was the way that people lived their religion, I should say. So I was comfortable with where I was, and that was fine with me. But I went. I did end up going. And if anybody who is watching or listening knows, this next part is probably going to send chills down your spine. It was a fast and testimony meeting that I happened to say yes to. And I'm sure she was like, of all the meetings you could have gone to, because you never know what somebody is going to say. When somebody has prepared talks and it's a regular sacrament meeting, there's usually a theme, and it's usually a little bit more tailored and a little bit more predictable. But when it's fast and testimony meeting and anybody can go up, you never know what's going to be said.
So Danielle, hang on a second. Let me explain real quickly for our listeners.
Certainly.
A fast and testimony meeting in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints happens once a month. It's when we fast, we go without food for a period of 24 hours. And then on Sunday, the first Sunday of the month usually, is when essentially people can go up and share their testimonies of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that's what Danielle was saying, right? Anyone can go up. You never know what people are going to say. It's not a prepared talk. It's not a theme. But we're asked to keep our testimonies focused on Christ. But sometimes, this is how someone explained it to me, an open mic. So anyway, so that's what Danielle was saying.
Yeah.
Well, it's fast and testimony media. Why we sometimes cringe when people come for the first time, because some people get up and say stuff. Okay, carry on. Thank you.
Yeah. Sometimes people can go on a tangent and not stay focused. So I can understand if she was getting a little nervous, but thankfully everything did stay centered on Christ and the gospel. And one of the things that was talked about in there happened to be some issues that really resonated with me, that I had no idea anybody else ever thought about. I should tell you that one of my biggest issues that I had with any Christian religion that I had ever come in contact with was I truly felt in my heart of hearts, I could not believe that a loving father, heavenly father, would condemn one of his children to an eternity of torment because somebody else didn't get on a plane and teach them about his son. That did not sit well with me. That was not fair. But at the same time, I also did not think it was fair if some people got a pass. Some people had to try to live their life to follow Christ, this perfect example, and other people didn't. And that didn't make sense either. But I never knew how to reconcile that. I had settled on this idea of there's more to this life than this one. That much I felt with every fiber in my being. I felt this life that we have is not everything. This is not a timed test that we have right now where if we don't get this done at this time, we're lost. I just didn't know what happened afterwards. I just had faith that whatever it was, I would have the opportunity, because fundamentally, I truly believe that the Lord can tell the difference between a rebellious heart and one that's just trying its best with the knowledge that it has. And I just had to be comfortable with that. And that's how I was going into this sacrament meeting. And they started talking about, going to the temple and lots of things that were never discussed in any other religion that I've ever heard of. So after sacrament, this was, mind you, this was in the Monroe branch of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Monroe, Michigan. And the branch was tiny. We're talking maybe, if I'm remembering correctly, like maybe 4 or 5 rows of chairs.
Well, that's tiny.
So
It's tiny, yeah.
it was small. It was a very small branch. Now, this is just my memory of it. I bet you if I go back, it'll probably be bigger than that. But that's how I remember it, is being very small. Very, very small, especially coming from large Catholic churches. But when somebody new shows up to such a small congregation, people know. So after sacrament, the missionaries just swooped in and were like, hi. They were probably just hungry. Hello. And I can laugh about this now because I can understand probably what they were saying. They're, oh my goodness, somebody new in such a small branch. I was a novelty being there.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
they're like, what did you think? And I said, and I honestly told them it was fascinating. I've always loved to learn. And these were things that I had never heard of in my life. And I was like, this makes sense. This makes sense. And they were like, do you want to learn more? And I said, well, yeah, I want to learn more. Little did I know I was signing up for discussions. I did not know that.
And let me explain that to people as well. So when missionaries meet, when they come talk to you, there's lessons that they share to share the fundamentals of the church. So again, that's what Danielle's talking about. And I love hearing, this is so cool. A small branch, missionaries came up to you and it was fascinating to you. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
You shared it.
Now they don't do those talks anymore. They used to have actual set talks where they or discussions and lessons that they would teach. Now it's a little bit more teaching by the Spirit, just kind of seeing where the Spirit leads you in these discussions, which I really appreciate.
It's catered to the individuals. Yeah, it's they look at for what.
But in my day,
no, I know. When was this? What year?
This was 97, I believe it was. 97? No, that can't be right. 97? 96? It's been a while. It's been a minute.
So when did you join the church?
It was in 97. Yeah, so that might have been in 90. I graduated in 94. No, it was 97. Yep, it was 97.
So you've been a member for 29 years.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now that you've been
I've never done that math before.
Yeah. So for 29 years, how has the church changed you?
It has given me a sense of peace because it's wonderful being part of a community that believes in those fundamentals that I believe in. I love the idea that if you're trying your best to follow the example of Jesus, you're okay. We don't have to be worried about all these little details of it'll all work out. Seek him with your heart and things will happen and it'll be fine. Just having that peace, it means everything to me. So it has changed my heart. And just being able to see people differently. Even though, as I said, I've always thought of everybody as children of God. Like now, everything that I do, I'm like, the Lord loves that person. There's a reason for that person to be here. I wonder what they're learning. I wonder what their journey is like. And I wonder what I'm supposed to learn from this. And what is the Lord trying to... I just think of him as more of an active participant in my life now in ways that I never did before. So I feel like the church has kind of given me glasses, so here I am wearing glasses. Everything was kind of fuzzy and I had this idea before, but everything is so crisp now. And it's just, I love the church. I love how everywhere you go, they all teach the same thing. I've been in many wards now, and everywhere you go, there's the same spirit and the same feeling. We're all learning the same thing on the same day. And I love that. So I love being part of this church. It has given me a second home. It really has.
Awesome. That is awesome.
So when was the moment? So you sign up for discussions without knowing, and I'm sure the missionaries were diligent in coming and seeing you. But what was the moment where you realized that this was the truth?
Okay, that's an interesting one too. Well, I was taking these discussions, and I was taking these discussions in Monroe, Michigan, as I said, and I attended school at Eastern Michigan University. And that's quite a drive. It's about an hour and a half drive down there. They made an exception because I started going to church with my friend because she would go home on the weekends sometimes, and she had the support of her family to kind of help me along. So my point with this is that I was driving down there to meet with the missionaries. I would meet at her parents' house down there. So I had this really long drive in between. And one of the times that I was driving home from one of my discussions that I had with the missionaries, we had already set a date, which terrified me to know that there was like this baptism date coming up in the future. And I felt like I didn't learn enough yet because it felt really quick to me. So I was getting a little bit nervous in that aspect because I love learning and I like to know everything, but I felt like this was awfully quick. So here I am driving home, feeling a little bit nervous and having this discussion, as many people do. I was praying in the car because I was by myself and it seemed like a good time to have a discussion. So I was praying out loud in my car saying, I don't know. I haven't even read the Book of Mormon. That's what I was saying. I haven't even read the Book of Mormon from beginning to end. How can I join this church when this book that is this keystone to this religion, I haven't even read cover to cover? How can I make that leap? How can I justify that? And I promise you, I heard words as if someone was sitting with me, loud and clear in my head. I mean, there was no ifs, ands, or buts about this response. The answer to that question was another question, and it was, have you read the Bible from beginning to end? And I was like, well, I felt convicted. I was like, no, I have not read the Bible from beginning to end. And the next question came immediately after that. And how do you feel about the Bible? Have you read anything in there, or is there anything that makes you uncomfortable about continuing to be Catholic in this pseudo-Catholic life that you're living right now, with that being based on the Bible? Are you comfortable with that? And I was like, well, yeah. Well, what makes that any different? You haven't read the Bible from beginning to end, but you're comfortable with it. What have you read in the Book of Mormon? Have you read anything that has made you uncomfortable in the Book of Mormon? I'm having this whole conversation. I promise you, this is how it felt in my head. I felt like I was just standing in front of somebody and he's drilling me. And I'm just driving home going, oh, you're right. No, I haven't read anything in the Book of Mormon that was contrary to what I had already believed or something that I had already kind of told myself before I ever heard of this church. There was nothing that felt wrong. And perhaps one of you guys are better with scriptures than I am, because I am terrible at quoting scriptures. But now every time I read about Alma at the waters of Alma, saying, well, what have you against being baptized? Because that was the conversation that I was having with the Lord at that moment. It was, well, if everything that you are reading has brought peace to you in both the Bible and the Book of Mormon, then what have you against being baptized? And I was like, I guess I don't have anything against it. I had nothing. And so I went through with it because I couldn't argue with that logic. I could not argue with that. I felt comfortable moving forward because I just felt like, well, of course. And looking back now, what did you say it was now 29 years? I still haven't come across anything that I'm like, ugh. Now, I've since read it from beginning to end. It's been a minute since I have, but I still dive into it often, every day. I haven't come across anything that I'm like, ooh, I don't, everything has brought me peace.
This is amazing because, I started my mission in 1993. So the interesting thing to me was that you're sharing this perspective. So as a missionary, when we commit someone to baptism, they say yes, or they are like, oh, but I haven't learned everything. And they're hesitant because they're not too sure. And I say to them, you don't have to learn it. We're teaching you the fundamentals of the gospel. And then so pause there. Even today, I'm 53 and I'm still learning. I'm still learning things and still being reminded of things. And so to share your perspective of how you felt as that person after committing to be baptized and saying, then kind of having this fight in your head, not fight, but it's amazing. I love hearing that perspective from someone, after I'm home 30 something years later. So thank you for sharing that. That was great insight from when I was a missionary, a full-time missionary. Yeah. What would you say? Well, sorry, Marc, you have any other questions?
My question is, what would you say to your younger self or anyone in a similar situation? It's like
That's a
struggling
great
to
question.
know what to find out, or maybe not really that interested in organized religion.
Mhm.
What advice would you give yourself or somebody else?
That's a really good question. If I could give advice to myself back then, nobody knows everything. And the beautiful thing about this gospel, the beautiful thing about the gospel is the perspective of eternity, I think. And you just to follow your heart. And again, I said it already, but I'll say it again. The Lord knows the difference between a rebellious heart and somebody who is trying the best with the knowledge that they have. And if it feels right, and if it works for you and brings you closer to Christ, I can't see how it would be bad. Just to have faith, to move forward. And I mean, worst case scenario, you leave, right? No harm, no foul.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine being anywhere else though. It's not just a comfort thing for me anymore. I look around and I'm like, if somebody could just see that there's more than just now, there's an eternity of learning left. Maybe it's just my nerdy self thinking that I can learn forever. I can continue to learn and to grow there's more than just this. We are ourselves children of the divine. We are divine ourselves. We're children of God. That's incredible. So have faith and trust your Father, because he won't lead you astray. His son was a great example. Just follow him.
It's awesome.
That's what I would say.
In my studies today, it answered a question that I'm sometimes, because I thought sometimes, well, if I could see Jesus, that would be so cool, and during my studies, in the podcast I was listening to, the gentleman said, having knowledge of Jesus Christ through faith without seeing him is much better and greater than having knowledge of Jesus Christ through seeing him. And at first, I was about to ask my follow-up question, and then he continued and explained it. He said, when you see Jesus Christ, now you know he lives for sure because you've seen him. Did you know anything? Have you learned anything different? Because during the course of your life, you learned a little bit. You knew that he was there. You knew, but now you see him. How else have you learned? Nothing more. But if you learn through faith, you learn to become like him. You learn to act like him. You learn the mind and the will of Jesus, and then it makes you want to do more. That's why through faith, it is much better to receive a testimony of Jesus Christ you can become, as opposed to seeing him. I thought, wow. So as I listened to you sharing what you shared, when you said that the question that was asked in your mind, well, have you read the Bible? Have you read the Bible through and through? So, and then you said, no, I haven't. Well, then what have you against baptism? So I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your time with us today. Before we I don't have any other questions. And if Marc doesn't, do you have any other questions, Marc?
No, I'm grateful to always to hear those wonderful stories.
Yeah.
And I can feel the spirit when you share those things.
Agreed.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah. Before we leave, we let you go. Sister Fletcher or Danielle, close us off with your testimony.
I have a testimony of the living Christ, that he is my exemplar. He is the one that I need to be following. He is the one that we all need to be following. He is the Son of God. He lived for us. He died for us, and he wants nothing more than for us to be like him and to follow him so that we can come home to be with him and our Father in heaven. I know these things are true, and I am so grateful for this church that has just opened me up to even more experiences to feel that love. And I pray that everybody who wants to feel more of that love to seek somebody out who is a member of the church. Seek out the missionaries or just look around. If you're looking for it, you will find it. You will find that love. And I just bear that testimony in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. And I add my witness that
Thank
I
you.
know Jesus Christ lives. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. We appreciate you coming and joining us today and sharing your conversion story. Marc, will you close us off?
Thank you again for joining us at Brotherhood and Banter. Today was a special guest, Danielle Fletcher. If you felt the Spirit and you would like to share this with your friends and family, or maybe you have a special someone that you know could be inspired by listening to her testimony on conversion story, please share it, like it, and subscribe for more that is to come. We promised you we're going to get you something exciting every time you tune in. Until next time.